Great, well thank you for your time this morning, and really excited to be up here to talk to you about this, but I gotta highlight, I do keep water up here because I'm one of those guys that has the Marco Rubio moment. Do you guys remember that? And we are in a desert, right? So anyways, if you see me reaching down on that, don't start laughing at me. So thank you very much. My name is Brendon Buckley. I am the Senior Director of Healthcare Technology for Johnson Controls. And, really, I guess you kind of summarize it, nerd alert, right? I run a team of clinical staff. I have, actual engineers from the clinical technologies. That could be nurse call. That's also your electronic medical records. I got folks that are leading Cerner, Epic, folks that have expertise on, I know this is crazy, building automation, security, fire. We have that as well. In addition to real-time location, you name the technology, there's a pretty good chance I've got an engineer or somebody way smarter on it than I am. So, and what's really been happening, and a lot of discussion around digital transformation, I think we've heard that word a few times today and every other day. We're all going through it, right? And I've had the whole, especially the big company like Johnson Controls, I've heard, yeah, we got to turn the big battleship and we got to turn it really quickly. Hospitals are no different. We have the same challenges. But I also want to challenge that definition of turning the battleship. It's not just turning the battleship. It's turning the battleship and turning it into maybe a cruise ship in the process, or maybe some other type of vessel. It's not just moving somebody's cheese. It's changing what the cheese even is. That is slowly happening, but it needs to happen faster. So today, I want to kind of get into just a very small example, hopefully something that's a little bit actionable for each of you on really how do we leverage some of the data that we have in our hospitals. Anyway, so before we do that, I kind of want to talk about the components that you always hear about, some we heard about already today, of some of the components around the digital parts of the transformation that you'll go through. Starting off with the single pane of glass. This is obviously your combined user interface for all of your devices. Everything from HVAC, security, fire, it could be other types of systems where you have visibility and control, which of course is enabled by system integration, right? Convergence, all that fun integration work that has been happening over the last few years and is continuing to accelerate, leveraging that information in an enterprise format, so enterprise energy management, not just managing the energy within a building, but within campus or multiple campuses, and being a little bit smarter about how we do that. Digital twins, which we'll get into a little bit more here as well, and the big data repositories, the lake. What do we do with all that aggregated data that we have? Analytics, obviously being able to do decision support, drive different predictions models, leveraging AI, and of course cloud, which of course is the infrastructure that we all hear about. Microsoft, Google, Amazon, everybody's in the business of trying to provide that scalable structure to deliver that. So there's a lot of other components that you're going to learn about. These are just some of the ones that we're talking about today. But I do want to at least highlight the fact that there is a foundation here, a lot of the technologies that we're seeing out there with regard to digital twins and single pane of glass, and we'll do a little more of a deeper dive on those. So here's the unfair question I'm going to ask everybody. So where are you on your transformation journey? Where are you on the digital road, if you will? So hopefully everybody's at least started in some format. Some are probably in initial planning or even getting into where you're actually developing full-blown roadmaps, maybe doing pilots or proof of concepts. Is anybody here done with their digital journey? See anybody shake their heads? All right, good. We got some realists here, or at least somebody that hasn't been sold something that was not true. Let you out a little secret. You're never going to be done. Not going to happen. Does that shock anybody? Shouldn't, right? Technology changes, our business needs evolve. We need to have all that, right? So it kind of makes me think about, I had an English teacher back in high school, a little old lady that would always say that like an English work or a composition was never done. You were never completed doing any type of writing work that you're doing. It's only abandoned. It's kind of the same thing here. Now bear in mind, this is also the same lady who once said I couldn't polish a turd with one of my works. So, for whatever it's worth, obviously English was not my favorite subject in high school. So anyways, bottom line is that as long as you're on the journey and you're being holistic about it, I kind of want to get into a little more about the actual data that is potentially available. But there's a lot of different stats out there around how much data is actually in hospitals, right? So it's easily over 200 plus IT systems. A lot of those are clinical in hospitals. With those 200 IT systems, there's over 300 on average, between 300 and 350 different interfaces between. This is just the clinical side. So we haven't gotten into the business side and the facility side. So a lot of data there. They're generating close to 50 petabytes of data per year. So petabyte is it's a little over 1,000 terabytes. Let's just say it's a lot of data. And the amazing part about that, does anybody want to guess how much of that data is actually utilized by your organizations? It's like 3%. 3%. So what the heck is going on with the 97, right? So today we'll talk a little bit about how we leverage just a little bit more. We're not going to get it to 50. We might get a couple extra percent out of leveraging that data. But here's the fact. Electronic medical records, that's expensive. Building automation, that's expensive. Nurse call, all these systems are very expensive, right? These organizations, you got to have them. So why not tweak some additional value and some benefit out of these systems? So here what I had kind of shown here is, you see on the top, you got the business systems, ERP, finance, payroll. We'll go through how we're going to leverage some of these. Building automation, obviously on the facility layer, security, fire. We actually threw our TLS in there too, even though it's kind of in between clinical and facility space. And then of course on the clinical systems, EMR, patient engagement, all the way to how are you doing environmental services, bed management, all of that. So great, we have some data sources. Now what? Does everybody get along with their IT department? Okay, that's usually the response I get. Well, you're going to need to, here's the bad news, you're going to need to do that a little bit more, especially coming up to really take advantage of some of this additional data. Because, knowing that, hey, we have all this different information in electronic medical record, or I have this in patient scheduling, or I have this information in the nurse call. That's all great, but what's value? So you really need to sit down and collaborate with your IT departments to kind of build out a matrix, build out a function value map, if you will, of that data. What is it actually telling you? All right? So, in this situation here, you kind of see we have 3 different categories. We'll start off on the left here with what do we know about the patient with a few of those systems? And this is just a few of them that we actually know. Well, with the admission systems, right, with ADT, we know their location. We know where the patient is, the room that's assigned. We might even know if we're tracking them. We also have what acuity level they're in. We actually know what diagnosis potentially they're in there for, what treatments they're having, what medications, right? We also know who's their assigned staff. Have they had any visitors today? Right? Ties into the healing environment and mental health. Nothing worse when you see that one person's in the hospital and no one's visited them. They have no outside family. Happens a lot. Also being able to understand from a schedule perspective, is the patient in the room at this time? Are they actually getting like infusion, or maybe they're at imaging? So that part from a patient perspective is obviously there's a lot of data that we can get on the patient. So what do we know about the care team? Well, we would know location as well, right? We'd also know what patients they're working with. We also can know, are they on duty? Are they in the building? Are they, what assets are they leveraging, right? Are they in the right spot? Or are they walking an extra, 50 feet, 100 feet, trying to find equipment, right? That happens a lot. 20% of the time nurses spend is looking for stuff. We also have, the ability to know if they're, going to be doing rounds and where they've actually done those rounds. And of course, understanding if they are on break. So a lot of the kind of information that we can access, which seems kind of rudimentary, but it'll all come together here in the next few examples. Last, of course, which is important to us, is the space. So we know who's in the space, if there's, what the patient is. We don't need to know who the patient is. That's not important to the facility system, but, is there a patient in there? And is there clinical staff in there? What's the environment in that patient room when somebody's in there or when they're not in there? So what's the temperature? What's the lighting? What's the sound in that patient room? So as you can see, what can we learn from just a little bit of clinical data? Obviously, the answer is a lot. So great, we did a functional map. We have an idea of what our data is and what we have. How do we actually get that data, right? It's not just as simple, obviously, as, hey, we found it, we got it, now we're good. It's really about, being able to pull in, different sources, right? It could be facilities, it could be clinical, it could be IT, it could be business systems that we're bringing into the data ingestion layer. We actually have to pull it in. That could be through protocols obviously like BACnet. It could be APIs. It could be HL7, which is BACnet for clinical devices. All that information, be able to pull it in. But great, pulling in is one thing, then we have to normalize it, all right? Because some of this data could be free text. You could have things that are measured by, it could be spelled out alpha, not numeric, in the way that information is stored. So there's a data normalization piece that has to happen. So, one of the platforms that we work with is, really, really good at doing that data normalization. So we found that is one of the first obstacles. We used to think just getting access to the data was the hard part. Nope, making it usable and making it relatable and to be able to be transferred between systems, that's really, really the hard part. Then, of course, once you have that done, you can serve up these different applications, it could be third-party applications, use any type of analytics or AI package. You basically have unlocked that data. So needless to say, none of us like proprietary systems, so this obviously helps with that. So just from a high-level snapshot here, this is really high level. With that data, we're able to deliver enhanced patient care. We're able to provide a safer patient environment from a security perspective, from a fall risk perspective, make a more comfortable healing patient experience. Also, you can start to impact things like staff retention. If it's a better environment to work in, chances are you might hold on to your staff longer. And we all know that nursing shortages are pretty much everywhere. I haven't met a hospital yet that doesn't have that. So obviously, everything that we can do with that is absolutely critical. So this is just a few snapshots. I'll go through a couple of them. And this is really, some very specific examples. If we have just a little bit of clinical data, what can we do with it? So the first one you see is, it's really about sleep. And if you've ever spent a night in a hospital patient room, next to a prison during a riot, it's probably the next worst place to ever get sleep. Spent a week in there, had spinal meningitis, and I don't think I ever slept, okay? So anything we could do, to make that better, obviously we need to. Hospitals are doing sleep protocols, trying to not poke and prod a patient when they're sleeping. Great, good stuff, but let's take it to the next step and try to maybe make that environment a little bit quieter. So if we can detect between, patient monitoring, wearables, and video, we can actually detect when patients are indeed resting and sleeping. So if we know that, then why don't we make sure that there's no work order tickets generated from facilities, or that, hey, maybe this isn't the best time to deliver that meal. They just started, going to sleep. Maybe we lower the temperature in that room a little bit, kicking the melatonin. So a lot of these types of things that we can do just by having a little bit of information around that patient status. This kind of also next gets into the smart patient room controls. It's all about that patient room control element. Lighting, temperature, all of that, those elements. But what I want to highlight here is visitor management. I was always amazed at how many times I would be, resting and then a visitor pops up. I want to do not disturb. I don't want visitors up here. And maybe I do want visitors. Maybe there's certain visitors I don't want. Maybe I have a list of, here's my accepted list of visitors, and if you're not on that, maybe you shouldn't come up. We kind of call this the mother-in-law feature. So we'll keep that one between ourselves. And, but really at the end of the day, it's all about putting control into the patient in a space when, quite honestly, they feel like they have none or very little. The next one is really about patient environment. This is leveraging the temperatures and really driving down the energy costs. So if I know if patients are being admitted or discharged from a patient room, it's a phenomenal occupancy trigger, right? So I can ramp up a room before a patient arrives, and if they're discharged, set it back. So pretty simple there. I want to jump to the next one, which is fall prevention. This is another one that really is really big. There's over 700,000 falls per year in U.S. hospitals. That's an average, which is amazing. We have hospitals that are developing some really good fall prediction algorithms. We have video sensors that we can do it. We got sensors in the bed. Let's pull that data in. And then that way, if we do detect patients starting to get out of bed, let's not just make the alarm go off, and that way the nurse can come in and be notified that a patient's on the floor. Let's try to get them before they get out of the bed. And nurses can't be there instantly. We wish they could. They can't. So why don't we have it so that we can do an auto response saying, please stay in bed. Let's, a nurse is on their way. And also turn on the lights. Chances are they're going to the bathroom, and chances are, statistically, it's at night. It's dark. So something as simple as turning on the lights and letting them know that somebody's on their way, it's a big win. So, the next slide, I'm running a little bit over here, was really talking about digital twin. I think everybody knows digital twin. I just want to challenge everyone to, what if you start putting some clinical data into that digital twin? What could you do with that? We do so much, simulations on equipment loads, and what if we moved the space over here? What would that do from space planning? Well, tie in your staffing. You do staffing models off this. Start implementing, or integrating, the asset management piece. So if I'm switching a ward over to a pandemic, or if I change the acuity level, what does that do from, obviously, the space, the HVAC? What does that do from a IT perspective? What does that do from a staffing perspective? How do we staff that? What kind of equipment, what kind of assets need to be there? Where should they be? Think about being able to predict all of that. So I'll skip this one, even though I do love the image. So really, at the end of the day, your takeaways here: engage, work with your friendly IT department. And I don't just say that because I'm ex-IBM and I came from that world. But I will say that create that value map of that data. Sit down and go, what's in the EMR? What really is in it? Let's go through, and what modules are there? What's the kind of data that we could potentially get access to? Sit down and identify what that is. Then identify what your key outcomes are and what your KPIs and metrics are. Do that beyond just IT and yourselves. Do that with other departments, obviously. Then get together, do ideation sessions, brainstorm. What are some cool things? Be aspirational about what you could actually do with that data. What problems could we solve? And then, of course, leverage your partners. If you want to leverage JCI, that's okay. But obviously, leverage your partners to help execute and develop that plan. And then start small. Don't go all in. So many people are going in like, we're going to do this huge, huge program. Do small, bite-sized pieces, do proof of concepts. But as you do your pilots and your proof of concepts for little elements of leveraging this data, make sure you understand what good looks like. Get your measurements for success. So appreciate your time today. Thank you so much. Hopefully you got at least a little bit, some things to think about on leveraging a little bit of that, extra 97% of that data that is just sitting out there. And I wish you all the best day. Thank you.